where you are.
Stay where you are.
Show me
Stay where you are. Show your hands.
Well, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder against Jonathan McCollough and Lars McCollough.
My dad's body's in there.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Obviously, I'll
What about your mum?
a little bit more complicated.
You will find forensically it's helpful. There's a hammer. I know, but I'm trying to help so you find everything. It's in the middle underneath the stairs. It will still have blood on it. It's rusted, but it will still have blood traces on it.
This is the moment 36-year-old Virginia McCollough gives a disturbing confession to detectives. She's just been arrested for the murder of her parents, Lois and John, who haven't been seen in over 4 years. This case is much more complex than it appears, and the circumstances surrounding what happens during those 4 years are just as unsettling as murder itself. Using nefarious methods and social engineering to avoid detection, Virginia managed to keep her actions a secret. And with the COVID pandemic hitting just months after the gruesome murders, this looked like the recipe for the perfect crime. But when a concerned doctor's surgery receptionist contacts police over concerns about the married couple's welfare, everything ends up coming to light. The youngest of 5 siblings, Virginia was born to John and Lois McCollough back in the early 80s. We don't know much about the dynamic of the family from around that time, but we do know that they were fairly normal, for the lack of a better phrase. They did love and care for us, they were just old-fashioned in their ways, so they weren't prone to displaying affection. Mum and Dad always enjoyed the time they spent with us. Our family was their pride and joy. John McCollough had an illustrious career as a university lecturer at the Anglia-Ruskin University and was a published author. But a decline in his health, which came in the form of type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol and glaucoma, pushed John to retire. His days in retirement were made up of playing golf and snooker, spending time with Lois on trips out to the beach, meeting up with a couple of friends down the pub on a Friday for a pint, and visiting the doctor regularly due to his health. Lois initially found herself as a stay-at-home mother. She spent her days taking care of the children and the house, but when the children left, she took up many hobbies. One of those was writing to people as part of a pen pal scheme. History and the royal family were her main interests. By 2017, all but one of the children had moved out of the family home. Some of them even had children of their own. The one that was left was none other than Virginia. Throughout the years, she'd tell her parents that she'd been diagnosed with a multitude of health conditions and also had some cancer scares, so they allowed her to stay at the property. The thing was, though, there was nothing wrong with her. Well, there was. As one psychiatrist would later put it, she had a personality disorder with traits of a psychopath. But regarding that moment in time, she lied to Lois and John. That wasn't the only lie. She also said that she was employed as a web designer, but the reality was, throughout her adult life, she worked odd jobs here and there, with the latest job being bar work. However, in 2017, she left for reasons that are never stated. Following that, she stayed unemployed. The lies didn't end there though, because when she left, instead of just being honest with the pair, she opted to tell them that she stopped working because she began to study to become an artist, a career path that would be financially beneficial for all, including them, according to Virginia. Around that time, Virginia also took on the role as a care worker. As you know, John spent more time at home because of his health conditions, and so she was there to give a hand, when of course she wasn't out of the house pretending to study. In return, John helped her out financially. Virginia was handed technology-based tasks, such as dealing with online banking, as part of her assistance. This, ladies and gentlemen, is where the catalyst of the murders began. Once Virginia gained access to her parents' bank accounts, she noticed that they had tens of thousands of pounds in them from their pensions and other savings. Not only that though, because some pension money was being paid into their accounts on a monthly basis. So from that moment moving forward, in her eyes, she hit the jackpot and a spending spree began. After a huge chunk was taken, Virginia wanted to continue the spree, but didn't want to get caught. So she applied for various bank cards and loans in the couple's names. That way, most of the savings were still there. But when she couldn't apply for any more, she dipped back into the savings and blamed fraud banking failures, or hacking when John and Lois noticed their money depleting. Virginia would tell the pair that she was in regular communication with the banks, who told her that any money that was taken would be paid back. Ultimately, nothing was ever redeposited because she was the one spending the money. When the couple questioned as to why the money continued to dry up with no repayments, she told them there were delays. John and Lois clearly bought Virginia's story because in a letter to a pen pal, Lois told them that she had fell victim to fraud and wasn't being repaid any money by the bank. She was extremely distressed. All the while, it was her own daughter who was behind the scheme. In March of 2019, Virginia McCollough, with no job and thousands of pounds of personal debt, decided to hatch a plan to murder her parents so she could take what was left of their money. It's believed they still had thousands at that point. The initial plan was to essentially put a fatal concoction of drugs in their drinks. This went on for months, but they kept surviving attacks. On the night of June 17th, however, it had finally worked. At least on John anyway. Lois survived the ordeal again. So the following morning, Virginia decided to use her backup plan, a hammer and knife attack. In the end, Lois was stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. She looked so innocent. She was just sat there listening to the radio. I did go in 3 times to build up some gumption, but I knew I had to get it done and couldn't hesitate. It was pretty much either do it or you're going to be arrested anyway for the murder of your father. You're going to go to prison. It started with the hammer. I was hitting like someone badly playing the xylophone or something, but it didn't work, so I decided to stab her instead because I didn't actually want her to suffer. She was just staring at me in disbelief. Following the murders, Virginia went to the local town centre to purchase some gloves and sleeping bags. When she got back to the property, she placed her parents in the bags and decided to live with the bodies instead of disposing of them. John would end up in a homemade tomb that was formed with masonry blocks stacked together and was topped in blankets, whilst Lois ended up inside of a wardrobe. They stayed that way for 4 years. But how did Virginia get away with this? How does one live with 2 people who she murdered that were clearly loved by everyone around them and were known faces in the local area? Well, the COVID pandemic would play a huge role. Obviously, that wasn't until months later though. So in the immediate days after the attack, Virginia took it upon herself to essentially act as her mother and father. She sent text messages, arranged and then cancelled appointments, and sent people gifts for birthdays. Heck, she even wrote to a pen pal. And when someone wanted to visit the home, an excuse was used as to why John and Lois wouldn't be available. When the COVID pandemic and lockdowns were introduced then, it helped massively in avoiding detection. John and Lois were some of society's most vulnerable, so Virginia played on that, and it helped paint this false narrative. Over the course of the next 4 years, Virginia continued with these antics, and believe it or not, on one occasion, she called her own sister and convinced her she was talking to her mother. For those in the local area, she would eventually tell them a new story, that her parents had relocated to Clacton because they were fed up of people gossiping about them. When they asked why the property hadn't gone up for sale, Virginia said that she was overseeing work that needed to be done before it could be put up. Her plan was working. However, she was extremely paranoid. From July of 2020 until September of 2023, Virginia made 238 calls to the local police for a variety of trivial matters. She did that to test out the waters every so often to see if she was on the police's radar. Ultimately, when she wasn't, it calmed the paranoia for a while. In the end, it was John's doctor's surgery who unknowingly blew the lid on the secret. You see, Virginia had been booking and then cancelling doctor's appointments for John. Throughout COVID lockdowns, that wasn't an issue, but by September of 2023, when everything had been lifted, he should have been going there on a regular basis. Due to the appointment constantly getting cancelled, the surgery thought it was for the best to get in touch with the police so they could conduct a welfare check and make sure that everything was okay. The police, believe it or not, had been at the property just a few days earlier due to a test the waters phone call by Virginia. When officers arrived at the property over the welfare check in September of 2023, Virginia told them that her parents were away on holiday and would be back in October. Officers followed up by asking if there was any way to contact them, and she told them that there wasn't, so they left. However, they felt something was off. The information that they collected was handed over to detectives who agreed. They decided that a murder inquiry made the most sense with everything they had, even though at that moment no bodies had been recovered. A few days after the inquiry was launched, the Essex police force obtained a search warrant for the address, and it was there Virginia McCollough made a shocking confession.
It's fine. No one in here at the moment. Hold on. The police. Got it.
Stay where you are.
Stay where you are.
Show me
Stay where you are. Show your hands. You here?
Jenny?
Yep.
Jenny?
Yeah.
Oh. The time is 12:12. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder against Jonathan McCollough and Elias McCollough.
Yeah,
Okay?
okay.
Do you have to say anything, but it may harm defence. If you do
No,
not
I just
mention
take my coffee.
when questioned, so much like to report anything you do so over the evidence. Okay? Alright, your arrest is
I'll
necessary
cooperate, I'll
for a prompt
cooperate.
and effective.
Is there anything in the pocket we should know about?
Yes, there
Where?
is. Can I take you to it?
No, you can tell me.
Can we go in there for a second, just so I can tell you something about what's in there?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then,
Yeah,
Just tell us
the only
something
reason
about
I
what's in
said I need to tell you something about what's upstairs on the top floor as well.
It's fine. We'll
Yeah,
go.
okay.
It's a bit more quieter.
Yeah.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
Yes, mind your feet, so obviously
Yeah.
we can.
Honestly, I'm not that dangerous.
No, it's fine.
I know, but obviously I've got to be careful. My dad's body's in there.
Right, okay.
Yep, okay. Obviously I'll
Where about
say,
your mum?
a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
That's why I said, can I go upstairs and show
Right,
you?
can you
If
explain
wanna
it to us,
bring
please? Because
officers,
we're trying to preserve this. It's now going to be seen, so we need to preserve this the best we can. So I don't want you to have you walking up there, all right? Because that's for your well-being as well as ours.
Oh, no, up.
Okay.
Up.
So what?
Thank you.
Where
Can I grab some
will we
hairbands
find your
as
mum?
well, if possible?
Where will we find your mum?
Okay, so upstairs there are about 5 wardrobes.
Yep.
It's behind the bed, at the back, next to the sink. That's the second one. I slipped 5 of those into his drink. There were about 2 or 3 drinks that I brought downstairs. And yeah, they were basically, he didn't drink all of them. He only drank probably about half of 2. But yeah, when I went in the morning, this was before my mother. When I went in the morning, early hours, I got up about half an hour early, about 6 o'clock in the morning. Came in and he was gone. He was gone.
okay.
It's
It's up to you if you want to talk.
yeah.
The thing is, purpose of your arrest. Purpose of your arrest is for a prompt, effective investigation, as well as
of
by
course,
questioning you.
of course, of
We
course.
can't do that here. It needs to be done at a police station, all right?
I did know that this would kind of come eventually. It's proper that I serve my punishment. So yeah.
Okay, so Virginia, I'm just going to ask you this. This is what I've written down based on the information you just told us, because what we regard as a significant comment, because you've made
Well, I
it
wanna help.
upon under caution
Those
after your
paintings,
arrest.
by the way, are part of they're my granddad's.
Okay, right. So I've written this, please. I, Virginia McCollough, have informed Police Constables 77329 Brown and 79387 Bowers after entering my house on Friday the 15th September 2023 that I murdered my father, John McCollough, who was stated was under a bed in the rear ground floor of the house, and my mother upstairs in a cupboard next to the sink.
Wardrobe. It's a double wardrobe.
Right, okay, I've written
Double
cupboard.
wardrobe. It's like 4 wardrobe doors, but it's the one nearest the sink. Double wardrobe.
Pick up then.
Yeah.
What's significant as I've written down there here now, I've just read out to you. Are you happy to sign that, to say that's a true account?
Yeah. Cheer up, at least you caught the bad guy.
I've
I
just
know, I
woken
don't
up
seem-
today
I
and
don't-
done my
I don't
job.
know.
No.
I know I don't seem
Not a lot,
100% evil, but we all... yeah, not...
I'm not going to comment on anything.
No.
It's not my job to comment on it, okay? Because I've got to be impartial with everything, okay? So I'm not going to give any comments.
No, well, I mean, I deserve to obviously get whatever's coming sentence-wise, because that's the right thing to do. And that might give me a bit of peace. Also in the handbag as well, there's, and again, because you're probably going to need to know about it, there's a card in there, card one money, and that's a bank card where there's a lot of transactions that have taken place over the last few years from money that pertains to my parents. So, murder weapon is upstairs in the toilet room, kitchen knife. It's in the middle of the brown carpet, against the wall, opposite the shelves. So there are two long white shelves. So opposite where that wall is, that's where the knife is. So next bit is very hard to talk about. That's probably the most grisly detail. So on the ground floor, underneath the stairs, there's a few like storage boxes and things. And in the middle, I think it's in one of the boxes or in a bag or something. If you want me to shush after this, it's fine. But every bit helps. You will find forensic clips helpful. There's a hammer. I know, but I'm trying to help so you find everything. It's in the middle, underneath the stairs. It will still have blood on it. It's rusted, but it will still have blood traces on it. So not cooperating is it's futile.
Yeah.
There's no point in not cooperating, there really is. And plus, apart from which anyway, I should take what has come. That's the other side of the coin, I think. So, yeah.
Virginia McCollough was charged in relation to both murders, and in the summer of 2024, she pled guilty. In order to try and gain some sympathy from the judge, so that way she wouldn't be sentenced to a whole life order, but rather have a minimum sentence. Because given the circumstances of the case, a whole life order could be handed down, she tried to somewhat play the victim. Although she put her hands up and accepted responsibility, she made false claims about how her parents had treated her as a child. But the judge didn't have any of it. Your sisters don't support everything you say. In any event, you were in your 30s when you killed them. Any difficulties in childhood do not begin to explain or excuse what you did. Following the sentencing hearing, Virginia McCollough was handed a life sentence with the minimum term of 36 years.
Good afternoon. Virginia McCollough murdered her parents in cold blood. Her actions were considered, meticulous, and carried out in such a way as to conceal what she had done for as long as possible. These were the actions of someone who had taken time to plan and carry out the murder of her parents in the interests of self-preservation and personal gain before living within metres of the bodies of her two victims for a number of years. Throughout the course of our investigation, we have built a picture of the vast levels of deceit, betrayal and fraud that she was engaged in. It was on a shocking and monumental scale. McCollough lied about almost every aspect of her life, maintaining a charade to deceive everyone close to her and clearly taking advantage of her parents' goodwill. She is an intelligent manipulator who chose to kill her parents callously without a thought for them or those who continue to suffer as a result of their loss. The details of this case shock and horrify even the most experienced of murder detectives, let alone members of the public. It therefore follows that the wider family of John and Lois, understandably, could never have guessed or anticipated that McCollough would be capable of undertaking these murders before committing herself to this level of deceit. They have been left utterly devastated by the circumstances of this case, and they continue to feel the loss of John and Lois each and every day. This process, from the finding of John and Lois's remains to the unravelling of McCollough's web of lies, has taken a huge toll on the wider family network. With this sentence, and with all that we have uncovered throughout our investigation, we hope they can now start to find a way forward with their lives. The family have continued to struggle with the intense media interest in this case, and I would repeat in the strongest possible terms their wish for their privacy to be respected as they continue to grieve their loss. Thank you.
And so, an interesting case to say the least. I'm still baffled as to how she got away with this for so long. I do think to myself, if John didn't need those doctor's appointments, then how long would this have gone on for? I mean, she was calling the police over trivial matters, so I think sooner or later she would have dropped herself in it. But to live with your dead parents for 4 years is just mind-blowing.
This is someone who is very controlled, somewhat obsessive, but also is showing those cool callous traits which can emanate from autism, psychopathy, which pre-exist. They've been there all this lady's life. So, you know, she could have done things in the past we don't know about. However, that cool, calm exterior is a product of her indifference to the humanity that she destroyed. Yes, it's complete indifference to human life and suffering, pointing towards herself quite a lot. She was fairly obsessively controlling the interview with the police, correcting them, you know, trying to get detail right, which seemed to her to be more important than the fact that she'd been living with the corpses of her parents for 4 years. I think it's narcissistic. I think it's a very much a psychopathic trait. It's a trait that also shows OCD, you know, obsession, where she wants to kind of control every aspect, but she's not emotionally involved. It's a complete absence of emotional involvement. This wasn't a killing in anger. She wasn't in hatred of her parents. She had nothing particularly against her parents. In fact, she quite liked them. But they just got in the way of her finances, the debts, you know, they're just getting in her way, and they had to go. And that was it. That's as much motivation as she needed to kill her parents and, you know, bury them in the house, basically, while she carried on living and carried on spending what was left of their money. It should really be very early on. To stop the case going the wrong way, as it were. To try and have this person break down in tears and, you know, be genuinely emotional about the loss of the parents. If she broke down in tears in court, in this case, it would probably be a case of feeling sorry for herself or a kind of tearful moment for the last glimpse of her mother before she battered and stabbed her. It's a case of that knowing that this indifference is there prior to these 6 circumstances arising, and knowing that this person carries with them that potential, that danger throughout life, that they could at any point dismiss another human being purely and simply because they got in her way.